Okay guys, so I think we can start already while I'm sharing my screen pero nalo-lost connection kasi siya. Anyway, we have a module naman to guide you with regards to the flow of the discussion for today. You know? So for this specific session, we are going to be covering or discussing the concept of constitutional rights. Not all of them, but we are going to talk about specifically on the Article 3 of the Philippine Constitution, 1987 Philippine Constitution. Now, Article 3 is where the Bill of Rights, the different or the list of our rights, our constitutional rights as a citizen of the Philippines. So that's the content of our lecture for today. And specifically, we're not going to discuss them all. Rather, we are just going to cover section 1 to 7 for this session. No? Isusunod natin agad or sa next session natin yung remaining sections. Okay? So, let me proceed to my presentation. Pasensya na hindi nyo pa nakikita. No. So, section 1 to 7 lang tayo of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, Article 3, Bill of Rights. Okay, section 1. By the way, before we proceed, I would like to appreciate the answers you had provided me for the last activities that we had last meeting with regards to the distinction of freedom and rights and what's more important, freedom or right. Ano? So habang pinapakinggan ko yung mga sagot nyo, really, I'm very impressed that you have those thoughts. You have those thoughts in mind in relation to them. In response to that, I would just like to make also an addition to that. On my own view, in my own view, I believe that, of course, I do agree with many of you that I would prefer freedom from rights. No? Siyempre, gusto ko rin ng freedom compared sa rights. But with that, no, I would like to point out that, of course, there are risks, no, giving human being a total freedom of himself. No? Uh, Pwede nating sabihin that total freedom is really impossible. Imposibleng magkaroon tayo ng total freedom kasi ano yung definition natin for the word freedom? It's doing what you want without any restriction. Di ba? Kumbaga, you can do whatever you wish to do whatever you wanted to do, no, without any restriction towards your action. And you know what that's mean? What does it mean? What does that mean? No? It will be chaotic. Problema 'yan, no? Without restriction, human being could become the worst, no, possible creation that could had ever existed. We have restriction for a reason. We have the different social restriction for a reason. That's because our behavior, if left ungoverned, no, problema yan. Imagine if people will just do as they wish to do. No? Kung anong gusto nilang gawin, yun lang ang kanilang gagawin or yun yung kanilang gagawin. Imagine telling your child or your son or daughters, your brothers or sisters, no, to study. Pero sabi nila, well, I invoke my freedom, gawin ko ang gusto kong gawin, no? Bahala ako sa buhay ko. Something like that. So without social restriction, we are removing ourselves also from our social protection to evil, social protection to criminality, and many more. Okay? So you can no longer control your children. You can no longer control your loved ones, no? Because they are free to do what they wish to do. But as I've stated, freedom is really impossible. Now, what we have right now is just rights. Lahat ng meron tayo ngayon are rights. Freedom is non-existence. that's philosophical and it's non-existent. If we're going to use the biblical references that we have, di ba? If you remember the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, no? God had instructed them, sabi doon, is they can eat, consume whatever fruit they want, except for this tree. No? So such thing is not a freedom, no? Because there are or there is a restriction to their movement and to whatever they can do. Okay? So yun pa lang is no longer considered as a freedom. Kasi sabi niya, pwede niyong kainin, galawin ang gusto niyong galawin, kainin ang gusto niyong kainin, except for this tree. I'm just using that for a reference. No? But it does shows that when some actions are restricted, then definitely it's no longer considered as a freedom. Okay? We may say that we have a freedom to live, no? Meron tayong karapatang mabuhay, but of course that is again with restriction. Either it's physical restriction, social restriction, or it can be natural restriction. No? If we really do have the freedom to live, no, then we can live as much as we want, but that's not the case. No? Eventually, our body will surrender and it reaches the natural restriction. So we're not free to do whatever we wish to do. Therefore, freedom for me is non-existent. Okay? So what we have is rights, and that's very practical because pag meron tayong karapatan, then there goes also uh, responsibilities and restriction to it. No? So every rights that we have has their own limits, but that is just practical, of course, because we need to be controlled. No? We should be controlled as a human being in whatever sense it is possible through laws, no, social restriction, and many more. Okay. Anyway, there are a lot of things that we should talk about the difference of freedom and rights and the importance of freedom and rights and so on. But I think that's very uh, important that we should be informed also of such differences. Wait lang guys, pakisara ko lang yung umuulan. Okay, so enough with that. I think we should already proceed to our lecture, and we have here the Bill of Rights of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. I'm confident that you are already well informed of these different rights, as you have tackled already the subject Philippine Constitution, no, on your senior high year. No, matagal na yun, but then such important as this, no, dapat hindi nyo kinakalimutan. No? Why is it necessary for us to study the different rights that we have, especially in our Constitution? That is because karamihan ng pang-aabuso. Di ba meron tayong kasabihan, if you remember this? No? I think I made mention kanina, walang abusado kung walang nagpapaloko. Now, common reason kung bakit nagkakaroon tayo ng violations on human rights is that we ourselves don't know what are our human rights and what are our constitutional rights. No? Dahil hindi natin alam ang ating mga karapatan, hindi rin natin alam ipaglaban ang ating karapatan. And because of that, people who knows better than us do, no, take advantage of that opportunity and take advantage of that advancement in terms of knowledge, no, to hurt us, to abuse us, no, or to exploit us. No? So yun yung minsan kulang. Or yun yung minsan isa sa kadahilanan kung bakit marami ang naabuso, dahil una sa lahat, hindi nila alam ang kanilang karapatan, at pangalawa, dahil hindi nila alam ang kanilang karapatan, hindi rin nila alam ipaglaban ang kanilang karapatan. So as I've stated, we're just going to cover section 1 to 7, no? So these are your Bill of Rights under the 1987 Philippine Constitution. Section 1, no, we're talking about the uh, deprivation of life, no? Protection under the deprivation of life. As I've stated here, no? We have the right to be protected in view or in relation to our rights, our human rights to life, no? Liberty and property, no? So no person shall be deprived of life, liberty and property, no? Without due process, no? Sinabi niya without due process. So ibig sabihin there is an exemption to this, that we can be deprived of our life, liberty and property if that is by virtue of a legal proceeding or what we call due process. Okay? So we are protected by our laws against any form of deprivation of our life. Hindi nila pwedeng kunin ang buhay natin. Liberty, hindi nila pwedeng kunin ang ating freedom when it comes to, freedom or freedom from oppression, restriction, no? Imposed by a certain authority on how we live and how we behave, and even on our social views, political views, and so on. They cannot take that away from us, and at the same time, they cannot take away our properties. No? However, there is an exemption provided by the Constitution. No? The only circumstances, no, wherein they can be able to deprive you of your life, no? We're talking about death penalty. They can be able to deprive you of your liberty. Then we are talking about imprisonment. They can deprive you of your property. So we're talking about confiscation. Is when there is a due process conducted. So when we talk about due process, we're referring to the circumstances wherein there is a case filed against you. Probably you had violated some of our laws, no? Nag-commit ka kasi ng crime, kaya sinampahan ka ng kaso. There was a trial conducted, and you were proven guilty thereof. No? If you were proven guilty, then definitely, no, the sanctions imposed by the law that was violated will be applied to you. That includes already imprisonment, that is deprivation of liberty, confiscation of whatever objects or properties that was involved into that specific case or crime. That is already deprivation of property also, no? Or worse is the deprivation of life, and that is through the imposition of death penalty, which is currently suspended right now. So, that is only the exemption we're in, no? Pwede nilang i-deprive, no, ang ating life, liberty, and property. But of course, there should be what we call due process. If I'm going to ask you, does extrajudicial killing, no, be considered as a violation of a constitutional rights? Where one life was deprived, no, because of alleged involvement to a certain prohibited acts. No? So if we're going to talk about drug-related extrajudicial killing, no? Yung mga pagpatay ng mga vigilantes sa mga drug pushers, drug users, no? And so on, drug lords and so on, would that be considered as a violation of the constitutional rights? Then definitely the answer is yes. Why? Let's say, for example, that it is true, no, that person who was killed extrajudicially was involved indeed into drug-related offenses. Sabihin na natin, totoo nga na si Juan de la Cruz ay isang drug pusher, no? Nagbebenta siya ng mga droga sa mga kabataan, no? Siya ay involved sa paggamit din ng drugs and so on. Now, is it just right and just to kill that person, to take away his life, to deprive him of his life without even filing a case against him, without even trying a case, and so on. Then the answer is, it is not uh, just. It is not just. Hindi tama yun. No? Kasi even criminals deserve to be, no? Deserve due process. No? Kahit sabihin natin the most wanted or hardened criminals still deserve due process as part of being a human being, and then as part of the equal protection of the law. No? Hindi sinabi na kapag ikaw ay criminal, then you will no longer be protected by our law. Despite you have a lot of protection being provided by law, and we are referring against your rights against custodial rights to custodial investigation and many more. Now, so that would be considered as a violation of the constitutional rights. No? That would be considered as a violation of the fundamental rights of a human being. No? Kapag ka ang isang tao ay pinatay, no, ikinulong nang wala namang tamang paglilitis, no? And due process, as I've stated, starts when there is a proper arrest. The person was arrested by virtue of a valid warrant arrest or warrantless arrest. There was a trial that was conducted, no? He was properly represented by a lawyer and many more, no? He have presented his evidence to his behalf and many more, yet he was still proven guilty, then that is due process. Whether he will be proven guilty or not, as long as those criteria was met, no? As long as na-perform lahat yung mga yon, then definitely there is a due process. So whatever the outcome of the case was, whether he will be deprived of life, liberty, or property, then there is a due process. Therefore, such deprivation will be considered valid. Okay? Next is we have Section 2. Yan. Ano naman sa Section 2? The right of people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. So whatever you own, whatever you own, we're talking about property, whatever, properties you have, like your house, your cars, you are protected, and that property is also protected from any case of search, yung pangangapkap, ano pa yung other term ng search, seizure, pangungumpiska, and so on. You have the right to be protected for it. Hindi nila pwedeng pasukin ang iyong pamamahay basta-basta. Hindi nila pwedeng kalkalin ang iyong pamamahay, ang iyong mga ari-arian basta-basta. Hindi nila pwedeng pasukin ang iyong business establishment ng ganun na lang basta-basta para maghanap ng kung ano mang gusto nilang hanapin, gusto nilang makita doon, maybe in relation to criminality or contrabands and so on. They cannot do that because, again, our Constitution provides us a protection from such activities. Okay? And at the same time, the government cannot take away any of your properties without, we have stated, without due process and so on. Hindi nila pwedeng, I will confiscate already your car. I will confiscate already your house, if that is unreasonable. However, the exemption to this is, of course, if there is yung tinatawag nating search warrant, which also includes yung confiscate, the act of confiscation, if and ever there are documents or there are contrabands found in your properties. So the only exception to this protection that we have under our Constitution is kapag merong search warrant. So if they are equipped with search warrant, then we should comply to the law. We should comply to the law. But if they are going to enter your properties without the benefit of such search warrant and other forms of warrant that has something to do with searching, kung wala silang mapakita na kung saan is patunay na sila ay pinapayagan ng ating korte na maghanap no, mag-search sa iyong property, then you are protected against those things. And if they insist to do so, no, pag pinilit ka pa rin nila, pinilit nilang pasukin ang iyong pamamahay para maghanap, mangalkal ng kung anumang mga bagay-bagay, no, then that would be considered as violation of our Philippine Constitution, specifically your right to illegal search or seizure. Okay? Now, when we are talking about search warrant, search warrant are orders that are issued by a certain court that has jurisdiction over your place. Kung ikaw ay isang residente ng Jones Isabela, then you expect that the search warrant should came from a court who has jurisdiction over Jones Isabela. No? And there are also processes that are being followed before they can be able to secure yung tinatawag nating search warrant. No? Mahirap din yung proseso na yan because number one, they can or the judge of the court will only issue search warrant if there is a probable cause, no? Merong probable cause na meron ng crime na nakomit or merong strong belief that there is crime that has been committed or there is a law that has been violated and the properties to be searched, no? The items to be taken or to be seized are the possible evidence or proceeds of that crime. No? Dapat si judge mismo ng court na may jurisdiction sa lugar nyo ang mag-identify ng mga tinatawag nating probable cause. And only upon finding such probable cause that they can or that the judge can issue a valid search warrant. So even the search warrant itself can be questioned in trial. No? Pwedeng questionin pati ang search warrant kung tama nga ba ang pagkaka-issue niya that there is indeed a probable cause. That is why a search warrant was issued to your against your property or against you. Because may sinusunod din sila. Mapapansin ninyo that the Constitution really is hard on the government. They are hard on the judiciary. Na? Ang higpit nila para sa mga sa government, ang higpit nila para sa mga kapulisan because their primary duty is indeed to protect the human rights of each and every individual. Plus, in our country, we're following the adversarial justice system wherein we believe that innocence, that everyone who is accused of a crime is innocent until proven guilty. So kung kayo naging pulis na, huwag kayong magreklamo na bakit ganun naman judge, parang kinakampihan mo naman yung kriminal. Bakit ganun naman piskal, parang kinakampihan mo naman yung akusado. Hindi ganun. It's just the case that mas mataas ang panukat ng ating konstitusyon sa mga alagad ng batas natin, sa mga alagad ng gobyerno, kaysa sa isang ordinaryong mamamayan. At sila ay naniniwala na dapat pag ang isang tao ay makulong, talaga dapat walang bahid ng pagdududa na siya ang may kasalanan sa krimen na inaakusa sa kanya. That is why mas mataas ang criteria na pinapatupad para sa mga kapulisan in terms of evidences, in terms of in terms of evidence and many more. Okay? So, as we have mentioned, under the Section 2, we have the rights to be protected against any form of search that are considered illegal if there is no search warrant issued for such activity. That is also a good way for us to protect, kasi baka mamaya minsan may mga tao na bigla na lang papasok sa'yo, for example, a barangay tanod will come into your house, sabi nila, tignan ko nga kung meron si ganito dyan sa loob, sa pilitan siyang pumasok. Tanungan mo kung merong search warrant. Plus, even he himself has no authority to effect a search warrant. As a barangay tanod, wala rin siyang authority to effect search warrant. For us to be protected of such form of abuses, we should know our rights under the Philippine Constitution. for us to defend ourselves against this form of abuses that could happen really in our daily life. Okay? I do hope naririnig pa rin ako because ang lakas ng ulan dito sa amin. Section 3. What about Section 3? Section 3 focuses on the privacy of communication and correspondence. Okay? So we have the right to privacy of communication and we have the right to privacy of correspondence. So correspondence kasi these are physical letters or emails and so on that are forms of mails na are correspondence. For privacy of communication naman, we have different way of communicating, either personally, through face-to-face communication, through the use of gadgets, telephones, cell phones, messenger, emails, whatever, no? Ang dami tayong mga way of communication. But what we must understand in relation to this is that we are protected to privacy in relation to our communication. So whatever the things that you had talked about, no? Ano man ang pinag-usapan nyo in your private capacity between a person to another person, no? Yung mga nakausap mo, either through the different means or methods of communication device or personal communication, shall be deemed private, and they cannot use that as a form of evidence that could incriminate you as a human being without, legal order or without permission coming from you. Para makarelate kayo, let's say for example, ako at si Mr. Pedro, na kami ay nag-away. So, pinagbantaan ko siya, no? Nag-send ako ng message sa kanya through my messenger account na siya ay hindi na aabutan ng sikat ng araw. Yan. So there's a threat made there. No? May pananakot. Question, can Mr. Pedro use my message by screenshotting my message, no, as an evidence against me in the court trial? Pwede bang gamitin ni Mr. Pedro yung screenshot ng message ko sa kanya na tinatakot o pinagbabantaan ko siya bilang ebidensya sa akin sa korte? Okay. So what we must remember there is that it's a private communication between me and Mr. Pedro yon, no? Yung usapan namin, that is a private communication done through the use of gadgets, messenger specifically. Now, if I'm protected against privacy of communication, that means that I or Mr. Pedro cannot use that as an evidence against me without my permission. No? Kung sinabi kong I do not permit you, bakit mo pinagkalat yan? Bakit mo pinakita sa iba yan? Usapan natin yan. But it is an evidence against me. Yes, it's true that it's an evidence against me, but still, no, there should be a proper procedure or process that should be taken into before that will be admissible as evidence. So in short, I'm saying that such screenshot or any form of screenshot or screen saving, whatever it is, no, will not be considered as a proper and shall make the evidence inadmissible because you are already violating my privacy to communication. No? Pinagkakalat mo yung usapan lang nating dalawa. That is already a violation of Section 3 of my constitutional rights. Okay? So, anong pwedeng gawin? Ibig sabihin, lusot na ako? No, that's not true. Hindi pa ako lusot. No? Sa kapulisan, ang gagawin nila is they will request a preservation of the communication that has been made between me and Mr. Pedro to the company itself. No? Ang mag-screenshot nun, bago maging admissible yung evidence ng screenshot na yan, dapat ang magbigay ng screenshot mismo ay yung tinatawag nating authenticated copy of the communication shall come from saan ba ang company ng messenger? Di ba part yan ng Facebook? So, shall come from Facebook itself. No? So mag-request ang korte natin ng Pilipinas, no, kung saan man sinampa ni Mr. Pedro yung kaso, ng demand, no, from the Facebook to preserve, no, to preserve the communication that happened between me and Mr. Pedro, specifically the one containing the threatening act, no, the threats. So si Facebook ang dapat mag-screenshot at magbigay ng copy ng communication namin, no, ni Mr. Pedro. And that should be based on the data privacy, no, na sinusunod ni Facebook, and by legal demand. Kailan ba pwedeng mag-legal demand ang Korte ng Pilipinas, ang gobyerno ng Pilipinas? That is, if a crime has been committed here in our country and there is a need for them to participate, no, in relation to our treaties that we have between the country involved, no? Depende sa treaties na meron tayo sa country na yan, no? So they could legally request a copy of that. But still, sabi ko nga, depende pa rin kay Facebook, no? Kung gusto niyang magbigay ng copy ng communication based naman sa kanyang sariling policy. Tsaka lang pwedeng pilitin si Facebook ng gobyerno ng Pilipinas, ng Korte ng Pilipinas, if it is stipulated under the treaties, the policy treaties that we have on that country, whichever Facebook company is located, no, their main office is located, no, doon pa lang mapipilitang mag-comply si Facebook, no? So I'm just saying that it's really complicated when we are talking about digital evidences, no, especially with regards to communication, kasi nga again, we have the privacy to communication as stated on the constitutional rights. We have also laws on data privacy. Different companies has their own policies also with regards to their clients and their privacy and so on. So napakahirap, napakalaking proseso niyan. But at least you know for a fact, no, especially you will become a police officer someday, that ganun pala ang usually nangyayari, no? Kasi baka mamaya screenshot yung pinapakita ng akusado or ng biktima, yun na yung nagsampa ka na ng kaso, no? Pagdating sa korte, masasayang lang ang pinagpaguran mo because that could not be accepted as an evidence because digital pagdating nga sa physical evidences pa lang, ang dami ng criteria. How much more for evidences of such nature, mga digital evidences. So meron din silang criteria bago nila tanggapin ang isang evidence of that nature na mga digital evidences. They must comply with their criteria also. So it's good that you would be familiar for that, ano? So clearly screenshots, no, it's not acceptable as an evidence. Why? Privacy to communication, no? Without the consent of the other party, that cannot be released or cannot be used as evidence. So kung yun lang ang kaisa mong ebidensya, no? Kung yun lang yung kaisa mong ebidensya, yung screenshot na lang, naku, magsasayang ka lang talaga ng panahon. But of course, if the law enforcers are true to their professions, no, they will do their best. Meron naman tayong anti-cybercrime unit under the PNP, and I believe they will try to do their best to bring justice to those victims of cybercrimes, and that would include also the threats, the example that I made. Okay? Now, other cases like this is yung mga tinatawag nating wiretapping, no? Yung wiretapping na yun means the activity of the police officer or the law enforcers wherein they're going to intercept calls between two individuals, no? Maglagay sila ng listening device, recording device to listen into, o yung tinatawag nating eavesdropping, para makinig sa mga usapan ng mga individual, private individual. So that is already in violation of their privacy to communication. You remember the case of former President Macapagal Arroyo and one general, no? Si Garcia yata yan, some general in Mindanao before, yung red tape scandal or the Hello Garcia scandal, no? wherein it has something to do with election manipulation and so on. So it happens that the one who initiated the case has an evidence at his hand, no? Na kung saan isang linalaman niya ay yung usapan ni President noon na si Gloria Macapagal Arroyo to a certain general that they are trying or to they are trying or conniving to manipulate the result of the election in that specific place. So that is really a great evidence. Ang laking evidence niyan, no? Na-record mo yung president, may kausap na general, pinag-uusapan nila paano nila babaguhin yung resulta ng election. Bakit hindi siya nakulong? Why? Because the evidence that they are presenting is considered as a violation of the constitutional rights. Na sino pang nagsabing pwede kang makinig sa usapan ng may usapan? Kabastusan yan. Paano may kinocommit silang krimen? Yes, no? It is really true that they are committing a crime or they are committing, yes, they had committed a crime, but still, there are process or procedures that must be conducted first before you can do such thing legally. No? Kasi pwede kang mag-wiretap legally. No? Pero ang ginawa nila, they just wiretap and after they collected the evidence, they presented the evidence hoping that, alam mo na, by the sentiments or the demands of the public, no, ay pwedeng tanggapin yun ng korte. By the pressure of the public, pwedeng tanggapin yun ng korte as an evidence. But, unfortunately, they have their own policies in relation to that. And that was considered as a fruit of a poisonous tree, no, under the poisonous tree doctrine, or fruit of a poisonous tree doctrine. Okay? So, whatever evidence that are similar to that will be considered inadmissible in court if it was taken illegally. No? Meron tayong tamang proseso sa pagkuha or sa pag-intercept ng mga communication, na sa pakikinig sa mga communication ng mga ibang tao legally. Na? So you just need a court order for that matter. Especially, yung napapayagan lang kasi under our laws are those cases wherein it involved terrorism, it involved threats to our national security, mga ganong bagay. Usually, ang binibigyan ng court order, no, ng permission to wiretap. No? Nonetheless, yung mga ibang cases na mahirap ng ilusot o mahirap ng kumbaga is i-justify. Okay? Next. Evidence, as we have stated, no, any evidence obtained in violation of this or the preceding sections, no, shall be inadmissible for any purpose in any proceeding. Lahat ng mga ebidensya na makuha, no, by violating the privacy to communication or correspondence, no, shall be considered inadmissible. Hindi siya tatanggapin ng korte bilang ebidensya. Okay? Paano sir kung sa halimbawa telephone call, ako nakarinig, ako nagsumbong about a certain crime? Can I use the conversation that we have as an evidence in court? Privacy to communication, you cannot use that. But of course, you can testify. Di ba? You can testify as a person. But the communication itself, kasi di ba ngayon we have recorder na sa mga cell phones natin, wherein kapag tumawag ka sa akin, I can press record at mere-record niya yung ating usapan. Na? Now, if I will use that as an evidence against you, kasi may mga nasabi ka dun na paninira kay ganito, may nasabi ka dun na meron kang balak gawin kay ganito, no? I cannot use that piece of recording as an evidence in court because, again, that is in violation of privacy to communication. What can I do is to testify that I heard, no? I heard that you are planning something wrong or something evil against a certain person, or I heard that you have said this, no, against that person. Mga ganun ba? I can testify in court, but I cannot use the recording of the communication that we have as an evidence. Okay? So that is with regards to section 3. Now let's jump into section 4. Under section 4, we are talking here about the passing of any law no, that will abridge, no, that will affect the freedom of speech, na pwedeng sapawan, tapalan yung ating freedom of speech, of expression, or of freedom of the press, no? I mean, we have freedom of speech, no, as limited by law, no? Kasi yung sinasabi ko kaninang philosophical yun. But then, we recognize the freedom of speech or free speech, wherein anybody can express their own thoughts, opinions about certain things, about certain issues, without without worrying of being, without being ostracized by the government itself, no? Kapag ikaw ay may nasabing masama. And of course, the exemption to this, if it's already considered as a crime, such as, you're using or justifying your action by using that, by claiming that you have freedom of speech, but if you're already violating someone's right, no, like for example, you are already accusing him falsely, would either cause a case of defamation or pwedeng mag-cause din yan ng case ng libel and so on. So, yun yung mga exemption. Other than that, no, we can actually freely express ourselves, no? Kung ano man ang gusto nating sabihin, ano man yung gusto nating ipahayag bilang isang tao, pwedeng-pwede, no? Pwedeng-pwede natin. At hindi dapat, no, gumawa ng batas, no? Sabi ng ating Constitution, wala dapat batas na gawin na kung saan is lilimitahan ang isang tao sa paggamit ng tinatawag natin freedom of expression, no? Nasasapawan ng ating karapatan sa malayang pagpapahayag and so on. So that what this specific section in the Philippine Constitution is pertaining to, no? Sabi niya dito under section 4, wala dapat batas, no, ang gawin or magawa na kung saan is pipigilan niya or lilimitahan niya yung pag-express natin ng ating freedom, especially in terms of speech, no, sa pagpapahayag, expression, and or of the press. Okay? But going back to the case of libel, libel, this is one of the law that is, I could say, unique here in our country. Kasi in other countries, they don't have the crime of libel. Wala yan sa ibang bansa. In our country, we have the crime of libel. Ano ba yung libel? Kapag ikaw ay nagsabi, na nagpahayag publicly ng mga patungkol sa isang tao na pwedeng sumira sa kanyang karakter, no? Na pwedeng sumira sa kanyang imahe bilang isang tao and so on. Mga libelous words. Na, halimbawa, magnanakaw yung taong yan, you are accusing of somebody, you are attacking his integrity. That can be considered as libelous. But in other countries, wala naman ganyan. I mean, you can just, say words to individual, like for example, naggamit sila ng racial term against a certain people, a certain person, that would not be considered as libel, no? Kasi they don't have the crime of libel in other countries. Only in the Philippines, kumbaga itong batas na to. The problem here is that a lot of companies, a lot of yung mga kilalang tao, mga sikat, may mga authority tao, na kapag sila ay binanatan, they're going to use this, yung libel na yan, yung law on libel natin, as a retaliation na against them. For example, for a certain company, na yung isang empleyado niya is merong sinabi or merong binunyag tungkol sa mga kalakaran nila doon sa isang company na yan. The retaliation of the company being attacked is of course to file a case of libel. So, big companies, known peoples, are using, those person with authorities are using libel as a way of retaliation. So they're taking advantage of this law to threaten, to threaten legal charges against their enemies, to threaten legal charges against those who wanted to file cases against them and so on. So ginagamit nila ito. Whether or not there is still a need for us to criminalize libel or not, no? I think the government should look upon this kasi marami talaga ang mga naiipit or marami talaga ang nananampalataya nanamantala, no? Dito or gamit ang crime natin na libel. Okay? Now, expressions, speech, expression, and or of the press. No? So lahat ng ito is protected under Section 4. No? There should be no laws, no, that would create such policies or such manifestation that this act will be considered as crime, no? Yung mga related sa expression of speech and so on. Di ba? Nakita natin usually yung mga nagrarally sa kalsada, bakit hindi hinuhuli ng mga kapulisan yan puro sila tirada sa gobyerno, puro sila paninira sa gobyerno, bakit hindi sila hinuhuli? Why? Because they're not violating a crime. No? Well, basically, they're just exercising their right of or freedom of speech. No? They can, go and assemble, petition the government for redress or express their grievances, no? They have that right. Karapatan natin yan bilang mamamayan. Karapatan ng lahat ng tao yan bilang mamamayan. So there's no crime in there because you are just exercising your constitutional rights. However, there are rules, no? There are rules for such activity. You don't you know that before you can go and bago ka mag-rally-rally na yan is you need to seek for permission from the LGUs where the place is located, from the police officers who has jurisdiction over the place kung saan kayo magkakandak ng rally. Lahat ng yon kailangan nilang makipag-coordinate muna. And now, in return or in exchange for a permission coming from these LGUs, coming from these government agencies, they will be given guidelines or there will be given kung hanggang kailan sila pwedeng mag-stay doon. Now, if they already overextended their stay there, kung sumobra na sila sa oras, then that's the time that they can be dispersed. Pwede na silang i-disperse. Or hindi naman kaya kapag meron na silang crime na nakocommit doon sa area, like for example is may nagkakasakitan na sa mga rallyista, at sa mga kapulisan, yung mga nananakit na yan, pwede nang hulihin, pwede nang dalhin sa presinto dahil they committed already a crime. Not necessarily that they are being arrested because they are expressing their grievances against the government, but they are being arrested because they had violated or they had committed a crime. Yun yung dahilan. However, other militant parties or organizations are taking advantage to this. Yung mga instigator, kumbaga, sila yung mga unang mambabato sa mga kapulisan, sila yung nambubwisit sa kapulisan para nang sa ganon kapag merong nawalan ng naubusan na pasensya na pulis, papatol, yun na yung magiging nila. Sasabihin na, tignan nyo yung mga pulis, sinasaktan tayo habang tayo nagpapahayag lang ng ating mga hinanaing sa gobyerno. So they're just taking advantage of this, and sometimes those innocent people na kung saan is either nabayaran lang para mag-rally diyan, nabayaran lang para pamparami kumbaga ng mga taong nandun or naiipit sa political motive ng mga party list na ito, at sa kanilang mga political intentions. So that's the very sad reality of such scenario. Now that they are taking advantage of the freedom that they are receiving from the Constitution to destroy the very foundation of the country, which is the government. Very ironic. Nevertheless, we must remember that we have that freedom. No? And also we have yan. So with regards to peaceful assembly, no, yan yung sinasabi natin kanina. It's okay to express grievances towards the government, no? It's okay to express your grievances about the efficiency, about your maybe your satisfaction towards the government, as long as you're not violating any crime. Because expressing such thoughts and opinions are really considered as freedom of expression or freedom of speech. No? But remember, tandaan natin na kapag ikaw ay nag-express ng iyong mga karapatan, ay wala kang aapakang karapatan ng iba. Okay? Section 5. No law shall be made respecting an establishment of a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The free exercise and enjoyment of religious profession and worship without discrimination or preference shall be forever allowed. No religious test shall be required for the exercise of civil or political rights. Freedom to choose or to join or even to create your own religion if you must. Kaya ang dami-daming sekta na dito sa ating bansa, no? Ang dami-daming sekta ng mga religion, sometimes sinatawag silang kulto, no? Pero hindi naman. Kaya may sarili lang silang pananaw. Kumbaga, if they wanted to worship Antonio Luna, if they wanted to worship Ferdinand Marcos as their prophet or whatsoever, if they wanted to worship Kibuloy as their prophet and so on, so that's their freedom, no? Karapatan nila 'yon. I mean, kalayaan nila 'yon na gawin 'yan. So the state shall make no restriction to such matter, no? Hindi dapat sila mag-impose ng mga restrictions sa mga ganong bagay. No, lahat ng tao ay malayang pumili ng kanyang sariling religion, no? Lahat ng tao may karapatang pumili ng sarili niyang sasambahin, kumbaga. Okay? So that's just the free exercise of religious freedom. No? And of course, the government shall make sure that the protection of such right is duly fulfilled. Na kung saan, wala dapat discrimination in terms of religion. Like for example, on the exercise of political rights. Baka mamaya sabihin ng ating mga batas is, you can only file for a position in the government if you are a baptized Christian. Hindi pwede yun, no? You can only receive benefits from the government if you are baptized, Christian. Mga ganyan ba? Di kaya sabihin, kayong mga Jehovah, no, hindi kayo tatanggap ng ayuda. Kasi, hindi naman kayo bumoboto. Ayan. Wala dapat ganun. The government shall protect, no, the citizens, no, regardless of what religion they belong, what sect they belong, and what belief they have in terms of spiritual entity. Okay? So, yan yung section 5 natin. We have the freedom to choose our religion. Whether you have a religion or not, that shall not discriminate you from the rest of the society. Since it's not because you are a member of this religion, it does not mean that you are already lesser than the rest of the society. We should have the equal rights still, no, regardless of what spiritual affiliation we belong. Okay? Section 6. Section 6 talks about liberty of abode and of changing the same within the limits prescribed by the law shall not be impaired, no? Except upon lawful order again. No? Also with regards to right to travel, it should not be impaired, except again in the interest of national security, public safety, and public health. Have you noticed right now, some of our constitutional rights are being impaired, no? They're being hampered upon the application or ako gusto kong kumbaga I want to claim my constitutional rights in relation to travel. No? Gusto kong mag-travel since under the Philippine Constitution wala dapat pumigil sa ating kalayaang pumunta sa kung saang lugar natin gustong pumunta. Overseas or locally. So for example, I want to go to Apari, then there should be no restriction for it. No, dapat walang mga restriction dahil sa karapatan ko na yun because it's one of my constitutional rights. If I wanted to gusto kong tumira sa etong lugar, sa ganitong lugar, gusto kong magpatayo ng bahay sa ganitong lugar, no? Dapat walang pumipigil dun, dapat walang batas na magsasabi na hindi ka pwede diyan, o hindi ka pwede dito, no? Because those are your constitutional rights. Exemption to that, if it is, alam mo na, no? Kapag merong lawful order by the court, no? Or hindi naman kaya if, kung ang pinag-uusapan na natin dito is the national security, the public safety, or public health. So siguro nakukuha nyo na yung gusto kong palabasin. Ano? Right now, we have a public health crisis. COVID pandemic. COVID-19. No? Because of such problem, no, there are a lot of community restrictions. There are a lot of quarantine protocols that must be followed. Gusto mong pumunta sa ganitong probinsya? Hindi ka pwedeng pumunta. Why? Because lockdown. What about your constitutional rights? Well, it is justifiable, no, that they could deny the entrance or exit of a certain individual, no, even if he is a Filipino citizen, just because there is a public health crisis, no? So that is justifiable. And that is a good example wherein the rights that we have in terms of abode and travel is being affected, no, is being hampered as a result of a public health issue. No? Gusto ko nang umuwi sa bahay namin, gusto kong tumira sa bahay namin. Nope. You need to undergo quarantine. That is also an example. No? Because of public health issues, you cannot choose where you want to live. No? Kukunin ka, for example, you tested positive for COVID-19, gusto kong tumira dito sa bahay. But the policy says you should stay in a quarantine facility because you are positive. And there's a risk na ikalat mo yung virus. So, that could be an exemption wherein your right or liberty of abode is being hampered by the public health issue. Okay? But nevertheless, if everything will go back to normal, no, balik na naman sa dati, yan. Pwede ka nang tumira kung saan mo gustong tumira. No? Gusto mong tumira sa bundok, magpatayo ka ng bahay sa bundok as long as lupa mo yan. No? Go! No? Gusto mong tumira sa city, sa Manila, no? Doon ka magpatayo ng bahay mo, go! As long as wala na tayong public health issues or there is no national security issues, there is no public safety issues. So there's gusto mo na namang mag-travel, no? Gusto mong mag-tour around the Philippines, go to Batanes hanggang Holo, pasyalin mo. Yes, you can do that as long as there is no longer public health issues. No? Because your right to travel, that is constitutional rights. Your liberty of abode, that is your constitutional rights. As long as there is no issues that would hamper such rights. Okay? National security, public safety, and public health. Next. Okay, last na. Last is let's talk about Section 7, the right of the people to information on matters of public concern shall be recognized. Okay? So we have the right to demand public information or public document. We have the access, no, to official records and to documents and papers pertaining to official acts. You can use this. Ang ganda nito if you have if you are trying to alam mo na, exercise your rights, you can maybe start with this. Go for example to your barangay captain. Punta ka sa barangay captain mo. Now, if you notice that there is a certain project, kumbaga project doon sa barangay ninyo, let's say for example, may kalsadang ginagawa, you can demand, no, from the office of the barangay, no, you can demand from the LGU to have a copy, to get a copy of, let's say for example, the budget, no, budget disposition, the financial documents regarding that project. Why? Because that is a public document. No? And you should have, or you are entitled, being a Filipino citizen and a resident of that area, you are entitled for the full disclosure of matters that are related to that. Di ba? Eh, publiko yun eh. Dapat makita mo kung paano ginagamit yung pondo ng gobyerno. Karapatan mo yan. No? Baka mamaya is ang laki-laki ng budget, ang late-late ng proyekto. They should disclose all of those things. You know, mga government projects ngayon, nakalagay doon yung date na i-start, sino ang contractor, sino ang engineer in charge, magkano ang fund, kailan dapat matatapos. Yung mga DPWH project, may mga ganun na because they are just complying to the public demands in relation to yung tinatawag nating transparency and so on. Now, there are certain agencies that are not disclosing this publicly, but then you can demand from them na kung saan hingi ka ng kopya ng kanilang tawag dito, ng pertinent documents related to that, like for example, disbursement, budget, allocations, and so on. No? Who won the contract and so on. So, all of those things are considered as a public documents. No? Ano pa? SALN, that is a public document. The statement of asset and liabilities for and networks for public officials. Okay? So you can ask for that, no, and they should disclose that to you. No? So may mga rules tayo diyan. And many other marami pa diyan mga documents or mga policies, like for example, they're trying to impose a certain policy to a certain barangay, no? If you wanted to demand a copy of such, no, baka sabihin na policy. Like for example, one of the group conducting research doon dito sa fourth year yata yun, I guess, is will be conducting a research on policy, no, regarding COVID-19 implementation of a certain barangay. So you should ask, no, sabi pwede mong puntahan yung barangay office, na, and then with just a proper request, gawa kayo ng letter, proper request that you will be using the document for this matter, for study and so on. You have the right to demand it to them. No? Pwede mong hingiin ang copy na yun as part of the exercise of your right, no? Right to information on matters of public concern. Kasi policies are public concerns. No? There are sometimes policies that are being implemented with no actual basis. No? Minsan may mga policies na in-implement ang mga barangays and even LGUs that are not even written. No? Like for example, one in the municipality I resided in before had implemented yung tinatawag nating what's that? On helmet. Yan. So they have implemented a certain policies with regards to helmet. 'Di ba? Meron tayong national law, we have may batas naman talaga tayo sa pagsusuot ng helmet. However, the penalty is different. Iniba nila ang penalty doon sa ng penalty. Plus, they have stating that it's okay, no? It's okay na kasi ang LTO usually nanghuli ang national highway. So mga municipal road, barangay road, and so on, doon kasi sila nag-i-implement. Plus, ang nag-i-implement or yung mga tawag natin sa amin, they call that poso, no? Public, yung mga, what's that again? Yung poso ang tawag nila doon. Hindi ko alam ang tawag nila sa inyo. Sila yung force multiplier, kumbaga. But I believe that when it comes to national laws, no, the one who should implement, kasi the one who is in charge under the laws ng LTO should be the LTO, no? Plus, law enforcer, PNP, no, members of the PNP can also implement that law since they are the general law enforcers. But for yung mga municipal enforcer, yan, yung mga poso, no, they are also implementing the law, no, which we question kasi bakit sila ang nag-implement, hindi PNP, hindi LTO. At sila rin ang nangongolekta ng fees, ng mga multa, at bakit it will go to the municipal rather to the national. No? So those are the questions. So they have stated that they have a municipal ordinance relating to that. No? So we demanded a copy of the municipal ordinance, but they showed us the law, no, the national law relating to the use of helmet, no, and so on. So it seems that at that time, na ito yung nakita namin because of conducting research then. It seems that at that time, they still don't have an approved municipal ordinance in terms of using helmet. Yan. So because of this, no, sa pagiging demanding namin for public records, we came to know that they don't have yet a municipal ordinance regarding on the policies that they are implementing. That's a clear violation. No? We can say that there is an usurpation of authority since they are already acting as the LTO and the PNP in that matter. Yet they don't have a legal basis for it since they don't have municipal ordinance that authorize them to confiscate license, to collect fees relative to that matter. Okay? So yan. No? By knowing our rights, no? Pag alam natin ang ating karapatan, we know how to fight for it and we know how to defend ourselves. No? And by that, no, people will think twice. Members of the government, no, law enforcers, you as a future police officer, you have the same rights as each and every individual. So wag mo sabing, sir, para namang laban sa amin yan kasi ang tinuturuan mo yata is mga citizen, na which is we are usually enforcing the law upon the citizen. No, no, kasali kayo dito. If you will become a law enforcer someday, you are also entitled for this. It's not because you are wearing a police uniform, hindi ka na tao. Tao ka pa rin. And you are also being entitled, or you are entitled also of all the constitutional rights present in the 1987 Philippine Constitution, specifically Bill of Rights. So kung meron mang violation sa'yo, no? Violations ang isang ordinary citizen, ordinary citizens that is considered, no, that is written here in the 1987 Philippine Constitution, you have the rights also. Meron ka ring karapatan that you would go over that. No? You would go over that. Like for example, as a police officer, you have the right also to demand, no, yung mga public records. I don't know if you can do that. So for example, hindi ka naniniwala na yung project ng istasyon ninyo is ganito yung budget. So at your private capacity, you can also demand from your superior a copy of that through legal procedure. Mga ganyan ba? If you are the if you are the COP, no, you are the chief of police of a certain municipality, no, at naniniwala ka na may mali doon sa pondo na binababa ni may mali doon sa proyekto na pinapagawa ni Mayor that let's say for example yung stasyon ninyo, bakit ganito lang kaliit, ang pondo niyan is higit 20 million and so on. You could demand, no, the public record, a record of especially with regards to allocation, with regards to who won the bidding and financial related matters, no? Legally. So yan, it's not only limited to those kasi sabi ko nga human rights is not the enemy of the police officer because we are all human being. Therefore, we are all entitled of our human rights. So whether you are a police officer or not, no, you have your human rights. It's just about respect of it, no? And sometimes kasi you will become the enforcers of the law, and sometimes there will be a lot of problems when it regards to enforcing the law already. Kaya minsan kayo yung nababanatan, no? And because there are those parties or organizations that are really doing their best to discredit the law enforcement agencies that we have, no? Ang mali lang dito kapag nagpasulsol ang community, nagpasulsol ang public towards those mga paninira, mga political agendas of the makakaliwang grupo, leftist organization, that's the time that the image of the image of the police will be damaged. And at the same time, they are taking advantage of this no, already para mas mapalakas pa yung kanilang puwersa through recruitment and many more. No? So be wise. No? You enrolled criminology for a reason. Okay? So that's it for my lecture, the part 1 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, Article 3, Bill of Rights. Do we have any question?
Sir, regards sa warrant of arrest, sir.
Yes po.
Kapag po ba Florida Jones, pero yung warrant of arrest is galing
Okay. Sige, I think I'm getting your point. So if the warrant of arrest was, halimbawa, ang warrant of arrest galing sa RTC ng Manila, no? Then, pwede ba siyang i-apply any part of the Philippines? The answer is yes. Pwede. No? It's not necessary that a certain warrant of arrest shall be issued at the same jurisdiction kung saan nakatira yung isang individual. So, halimbawa, si Mr. Pedro, may kaso sa Manila, nagtago sa Cagayan. No? So, ang kaso niya, sinampa doon sa RTC nila sa Manila. So, ibig sabihin, ang kanyang warrant of arrest is manggagaling din sa Manila. Ngayon, since PNP is a national in scope and at the same time, we are, the criminal law is applied generally, no? Nationally. So, pwede nilang i-apply ang warrant of arrest na yun, even if it is issued in that specific jurisdiction, no? Pwede pa rin nilang i-implement yun dito sa kahit saang panig ng bansa. As long as nasa jurisdiction ka pa rin ng Pilipinas. The only problem is that kapag out of jurisdiction ka na, halimbawa tumakbo na siya sa tumakbo na siya sa Hong Kong, tumakbo na sa China, then that's the time that hindi mo na pwedeng i-apply yung warrant of arrest mo because you are no longer within the jurisdiction. What you can do is to coordinate with the international police or the police of that specific countries. If you have treaties, pwedeng repatriation, then arrest. Ganon. Pero yes, pwede i-apply.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome po. Any more? Okay, so if there are no more questions then, I do hope you learned something again for this lecture, and later on, if you will have question relative to this, feel free to just message on the messenger group or the Facebook group or the channel, no? Pwede kayo magtanong. So, if there are no more questions, guys, salamat sa pagkikinig. See you next meeting. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, sir.
Bye-bye. Thank you.